Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Hello, my name is Olivia Allison, and on behalf of the Center of Excellence for Hospitality Resilience, I am pleased to welcome you to the Ensuring a Resilient Event Business series. Today's module will focus on designing your event-goers virtual experience, where we will explore the pluses and minuses of these options with practical examples of what works and what does not. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today. This series is intended to support small tourism and hospitality businesses looking to create, sustain, and grow their event management offerings. This 6-part series is brought to you by the Center of Excellence for Hospitality Resilience, a joint initiative of Temple University's School of Sport, Tourism, and Hospitality Management and Temple's Small Business Development Center. Today's module is a 60-minute session with a 30-minute Q&A where you can ask questions via the chat box or the Q&A function in Zoom. And following today's module, all attendees are welcome to join our open office hours, where you can ask today's presenter questions about topics covered in the session, as well as any questions you may have pertaining to hybrid and virtual events, community events, and not-for-profit events. Those office hours are held from 3:30 to 5:30 in a separate Zoom meeting where you will be able to turn on your cameras and ask your questions directly to the instructor. And I'll post a link to register for those office hours in the chat box in case you haven't had a chance to do so. But in the meantime, I'm going to turn the floor over to today's presenter, Cindy Lyric.
Hi, thank you, Olivia. Welcome, everyone. As Olivia said, this is all about virtual events and the virtual experience. And I'm going to tell you first a little bit about me. I have been in the event business forever and a day. It seems like for probably 30 years. Started out basically doing road races, running races. Think of 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, triathlons. And then got into leaving that because in the event world, those were not even considered events. They were sporting activities. That has changed over the years. And I was fortunate to do some parades, concerts, a lot of art festivals, community festivals. I've managed a downtown association in Minneapolis called Uptown. I've done educational seminars and some conferences. And I do coordinate and manage the International Festival and Events Continuing Ed program. I've told you all about me. Can you kind of tell me and write in the chat what kind of business you are in? That will just help when we can focus a little bit. And I'll look at that as we're going. So 2020, about 13 months ago, we all woke up one day and the world was shut down. This wasn't something we had imagined. It wasn't something we even thought about. And I don't know about you, but I really didn't know how long it was going to last. The event industry, nobody really wanted to talk about it. I had been at a conference. It was the end of February. And it was a board meeting of the International Festivals and Events Association. And we were introduced to this concept of the virus. And I got home and I called my clients and I said, you want to check with your insurance companies, you want to look at your contracts, something's coming, and I don't know how the industry is going to be prepared for it. And everyone kind of blew me off and said, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you don't know what's going on. Well, then 2 weeks later, my clients all called and said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I don't know if I can have my event. I don't know what I should do. And there was massive panic because all these events were being canceled or postponed. The industry, in the event industry, really wasn't quite ready. They did not know what to do. Then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, people were pushing their dates. Oh, I was in May, I'm now gonna go in July. And then, oh, I'm gonna go in October. So very similar to what you're seeing right now, because people are still pushing back their events, we were gonna have this massive fall of all these community events happening in every city once again, to a festival overage or saturation. In fact, last fall, all of them started converting their events to the virtual space. And they really weren't quite sure what the virtual space was. And the definition by Wikipedia is a virtual space is an online event that involves people interacting in a virtual environment on the web rather than in a physical location. And when we were working through, you saw all of everybody changing. Hamilton goes virtual. Macy's Parade goes virtual. This festival goes virtual. And a lot of it really wasn't virtual. What it was they were going to be streaming and not having any engagement with their clientele. Many of them were just going to do the same thing they did and stream it live. Didn't matter if there wasn't a way for their participants or attendees to engage. There were, porch parades where people were, making, decorating their front yard and people were driving by. Really okay event, but is it really a virtual event? Not really. And as we were changing, things were going on, people were getting frustrated. And things were, what are we going to do next? And it's kind of interesting because the festival and events industry didn't really look at their consumer. They only did it from their point of view. They looked at one side, but when you think about events, you think about how they come into your space. And if we're doing a live in-person event, people will usually hear about it. You guys probably had some social media, traditional media. Maybe you invited them in an email. And then they would either commit to attend, for if it's a free festival, you never really knew who was coming or not. I don't know about the rest of you if you've done any events. I always had a fear, what if no one showed up? Putting on these large festivals, what if I spent all this company's money and nobody comes? Because we never really had that sense of engagement. The people would commit. Pre-event, they would kind of look around and see, oh, well, how are we going to get there? Are we going to drive? Are we going to take the bus? Are we going to fly to the event? We're going to get a hotel. Once they got there, they came in. We really didn't focus where they went for most community events. They come into an event site. Maybe you go over to this area, the food area or the beverage area, or maybe you see the music area. And we just continue to walk through. We have and design our own event experience, and then we drive home or get on a bus or a taxi or Uber or go back and hang out with some other things. And then maybe at the festival, we were given a survey to fill out or somebody touched base with us. Well, in the virtual world, it's a little bit different. We have to invite the people through social media. A lot of times they'll come in through that, word of mouth, they'll hear about on the internet. Then we usually, even if they're free events, we ask them to register online because we have to send a link out to them. And when they get ready to do the event, they don't have to travel. Well, maybe they have to travel from their kitchen to their bedroom. And they have all this distractions out there. And then they sit down and watch, and they can do whatever they want. They can mute you, but we deliver content. And we don't really know if they're absorbing it. We're hoping they're absorbing it. And then we click off and we send them a survey to see how their results were. We didn't really, at the beginning of this, think about the attendee and how we engage with them. And Olivia, if people ask questions during, you can break me in and ask the questions. I'm good with that if that works.
Sounds good.
So why, and we never really figured out why we were doing this. I remember calling my event colleagues and saying, why are you doing it? And they're like, well, I got to do something. And I kept asking, well, why do you have to do something? What are you going to do that's going to be relevant to your brand? When you go to an event, and if it's not done well, what do you remember? Everybody remembers bad events. And we do remember good events, but we usually don't talk that much about the good events. We usually talk more about the bad experience we had. And I kept asking my event colleagues, well, what are you going to offer? Content is going to be really important. You can't just stream last year's music. You can't just put something up and say, do it. You have to have something engaging. When are you going to do this? Is it going to take place of the whole time that your event was going? And that's what a lot of festivals and community events did. They would have 3-day virtual events or a month-long virtual events and expect people to come and go for this whole experience. I remember some trainings virtually that were during Memorial Day weekend, and they started on Thursday, and they went from my time, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and sitting in front of a computer, not having breaks. I don't know about you, it got really long and boring. Plus the distractions that came into my life, people coming into my apartment, noises outside, not that much noise because it was COVID, but people could walk by. It was just a little crazy. Who is going to come? Now we have more of an entity of actually really engaging with the people we want. Because we're using so much more social media, we can target with Facebook who we want. We can do lookalike crowds. We can branch out. Again, what and where? Just the same 5 basics that you would do whatever you're planning an event: who, what, where, when, and why. But why is always the big thing. And if you don't have that why piece, that's something you really want to think about, because people aren't just going to come. They're not going to be, build it and they come. Like with a community festival, they may stagger by, but here you are really, really asking them to join in. One of the other differences about virtual events is that you can plan them a little bit faster. I've looked at a lot of the people doing fundraising and events in the chat. And, when you're doing a large scale event or even any event, it took you, 6 to 9 months to plan that event. Well, the interesting thing with virtual was you could see that they were planning these 3 months out. They were deciding the goals, their themes, their expectations. Most of them were trying to figure out budgeting. Many of them thought it would be easy and not that expensive, where it can be extremely expensive. 2 months out, you're going to develop your marketing and promotional plan, your itinerary. You're going to decide on the platform. There's so many platforms you want. Maybe you're just going to do a Facebook Live event. That's virtual. That's great. But you're kind of thinking about it as you are planning it. Some of these you don't even have to buy. Some of them you can do for free for a limited time, 40 minutes. I think Zoom changed it now that they don't even have a timeline on how much time you can use. And then you're going to start, once you have that itinerary, what you're going to do, you're going to start developing your event site and inviting your people through web, Facebook, social media. You're going to be getting your commitment of your performers, your speakers, the content they're going to do. You're going to be just doing what you would normally do with an event, engaging and getting all that final work of, yes, I'm going to be here. Here's what I commit. Here's my pre-recorded. No, I'm going to do it live. We're going to have Q&A. And you're going to do a lot of just the basic event planning. The nice thing about the virtual event is you can start engaging on social media and you can get more people to come and pass it on. The best way about this is it grows very, very fast if you allow it. And we will look at some examples so you can understand this. About 2 weeks out, you're going to want to be sure you have all the itinerary done, and you're going to want to have all your pre-recorded content that you're going to use. If you're going to use pre-recorded, you want to be sure you've connected with your presenters and they understand the platform you're using. You're going to want to work with if they need help. And then you're also going to work with your attendees on how they can enter your space. And a 1 week out, you're going to really work on your rehearsals and what's going through it. I'm going to show you a a little bit of how we did it for one event. This event it was Irish Porch Party. It was in Minnesota. It's in Minneapolis, St. Paul. It's an event that happens yearly. It's 45 years old, and it's basically everything Irish. This event was to happen in August, the 7th, 8th, and 9th. They usually see 130,000 people, and they had to cancel their event, and they canceled it in May. Nobody knew what was going to go on. Again, we talked about the fear of missing out. This organization, I worked with them. Their board of directors were really adamant that we would do something. We decided because at this point in June, people were getting sick of staying home. People were getting sick of having nothing to do. We decided we would ask people to create an Irish fair on their porch, and we would stream content to them and engage with them through a Facebook Live experience. But to do that, before we could sell this concept to our board and our sponsor, we had to kind of figure out what we were going to do. And I found this was a really easy way to get people to understand before we actually decided to do the event. So we sat down and we decided, and again, this was me and 3 interns. I am not tech savvy, and my interns were not event specialists. They were just finishing up their event degree. Most of them had not worked in the event landscape, except for some projects at school. So we sat down and we built out a PowerPoint to show the board what we wanted to accomplish here. And this was also what we were going to show to our sponsors once we got approval to go on, to see if we could get some money to support this venture. So we literally just told them how we were going to start. We were going to have something running to let people know on Facebook. We were going to do a PowerPoint and just loop it with pictures and music of the event we had done in the past. We were going to start at 6 o'clock with someone from Guinness. Guinness was a sponsor. We were going to start and let them open up the stream from wherever they were. Jimmy is one of their spokes people for the Midwest. And so he was in Chicago. I was in Minnesota, and my interns were in New Jersey and Ohio during the performance. So we were just walking through. This is just our brief itinerary. Then we were going to stream back to somebody back in Minneapolis, and they were going to just have a conversation about Irish Fair, pick up a glass and toast each other. We were going to continue back to Jimmy, and he was going to show us how to pour. And it just kind of goes through all of the things we were going to do. We were going to hopefully get one of our performers to live stream or send us pre-recorded content. We were going to cut back and just have someone, listening and hear a little bit of Guinness history. As you can see, we're pretty heavy pitching Guinness right now because we wanted them to help support us. And then we were going to come back and just have an intermission where we'd again do some trivia, play some tunes, some old pictures and video of Irish Fair, come back and come in, and we would talk about baking soda bread. We have some Irish dancers, and we'd near the end, we would just wish them the best, and then we'd fade away, and that would be the end. We presented that to the board, and they were thrilled with it. Our next step was we had to develop or run a show. Just like when you're doing a festival or a community event, we had to walk through every piece of what we were going to do on the timeline. And the interesting thing when you're doing this, when we're doing live and the run a show is kind of going off, it's easier to recover because nobody really knows that in 2 minutes, that guy is standing on the stage and he can't get the mic going. Everybody's kind of creating their own experience and having an okay time. They're not just focused on the screen. Well, here we really, really, really needed to be sure of our game and what we were going to do. So for everybody who was on screen on the far right, you would see who was on, the producer, what they were doing, when they were going to put video up, when they weren't going to be putting video up, when they were going to be shooting, over to Jimmy, back to Tom, all over the Midwest to do this event. One of the things we found out as we started down this process was everybody really, really wanted to be involved. We didn't think we'd get any of our performers to do it. They wanted to jump in. And like any event, you never see that energy until the last month. When we first reached out, they were a little like, we don't know what you're doing. But at the end, they came through and they're like, hey, do you have any more room? Which was good and bad because we had to turn away some great partners. The other thing that was really important for us was to do a trial run before we went. And this was for everybody on the stream. And I will tell you, this was the hardest piece of starting out doing these virtual runs, is getting people to rehearse. When you have a community festival, you invite a band in, you don't ask them to rehearse before they go on. You just, hey, your time slot's here. You're gonna have this music. You invite the vendors in. You're like, hey, here's your booth, set it up. You don't really go through that process of here's how it's gonna go. Can you connect? Can you understand where your camera is? Pretty much like getting on a Zoom call. And we did, we used Zoom as our main platform, but no one was on the call except the event producers. And we were streaming out to Facebook. So no one else was invited into our space. You only could watch it on Facebook. This was really hard for people to understand, that rehearsal and going through a run through was good. What it also did for the team was to see if we had to switch around our content. Was it boring? Do we needed to make some changes? And we did this about probably a week out, so we had some time and we could rehearse it again. What I'm going to have you do as we go through, and you just saw that, we're going to look at 3 events, and they're very similar, but yet they're very different. And I'm going to walk through how they engaged, how they literally set their spaces up, and then their outcomes. Because I don't think virtual events are going to go away. And I think many of us will be doing more hybrid events, which means streaming and having some people live at the venue in the future. And who knows, but we might as well get on it, embrace it, and do the best we can. So when we had starting points, the 3 events we're looking at is Irish Fair, that's in Minnesota, Art Fest at Home, which is in Fort Myers. And then there's a school project, Yumi and High Tea, that was based in the UK, but all the students were from Caribbean, Guyana, the US and Canada. And why I put this up there is I wanted just to show you the starting points. You can see Irish Fair had 16,000 followers on Facebook. They had 10,000 emails on Constant Contact or MailChimp. The platform they were going to use was going to be Zoom, and they were going to register their people through Google Form. And they had a budget of $35. We talked a little bit. I was a full-time person there, and I had 3 interns. Art Fest at Home had 12,000 Facebook followers, 10,000 emails through their Constant Contact and MailChimp. They were going to use a site called Eventgoers. It's almost a marketplace and a virtual experience, which is changing. They started off in 2019 basically as a project management platform for events for space and volunteers. And in 2020, pivoted to the virtual piece to create a market space for vendors and merchants to sell goods during a festival. They also use StreamYard, and they put a lot of their content on their website and pushed it out to the 2 different entities, Eventgoers, and then whenever they use StreamYard. But the website was their first contact for people coming in. They had about $20,000 to spend. They got a grant from their tourism association, so they were utilizing that. They had 3 full-time people, 1 consultant, and 2 interns working on this project. And again, the first time pilot, they had 0 Facebook followers, 0 email followers. They used Eventbrite to register, and then they used the Zoom platform to do the actual event. They had a budget of $30, and their staffing was 7 MA students, 1 with event experience, massive. The rest were a marketing, decor, tourism, brand activations people in that space. Their goals, they each had set goals. Irish Fair only wanted 10 porches. When we started down, we only wanted this event to reach the people we were used to. We were thinking very, very local, beyond 10 porches in Minneapolis and St. Paul. We didn't really think this had a lot of reach. We wanted to generate some interest on social media. We thought we could get 500 engagement, likes, shares, somebody reacting on social media. And we only wanted, of the people who registered, we only wanted 80% of them to stay on. And we only wanted, we really didn't want them to stay on for the whole time. We had no, in our heads, they were only going to come in and go off and maybe come back. They were going to create their own Irish Fair party with their family on their porch. And we were just going to provide little tidbits of information or entertainment. And they were going to ask for donations, and they thought they might get $250. Art Fest at Home, they didn't really have a goal. They just felt that they were needed to do a virtual space. They were planning, and they did go live also. So they were creating for those people who would not want to come to an event, who may want to see what the art fair is doing and see what the artists were selling, the music, and some of the school programs. There was no goals. They didn't set goals for what they were going to generate. They had really no inkling to what kind of engagement. They had used social media in the past, but basically, like a lot of events had done in the past, social media was to tell you what was going to happen, not really get the clients or the attendees to engage in your experience. And they were not going to ask for donations. They were hoping to have sales for the artisans, but it wasn't a goal. The school project for the master's program and creative event management, they wanted to hit a registration of 50 people. They wanted to have 500 types of click-through engagement on social media, reach, and they wanted to have 65% of their registrants viewing, and they had a no ask because it was a pilot event. They were not going to ask for any money. So Irish Fair, we opened on July 8th, and you can see we wanted 10. The first day we got 54 people who registered. Now again, we just sent it through a constant contact email. We put it on our website, and we put it on our Facebook page. It jumped right away. And right then we knew that we had to think larger because we had already met that first goal of 10 porches. And the interesting thing was they were coming from not just Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul, but they were coming, we even had people coming from Europe and Ireland. So we set our goals a little bit higher and decided we wanted to try to get every state and see how many continents we would get. We had no closure because we were not doing it on a Zoom platform where people were going to engage with each other, like a Zoom meeting, not a webinar per se, but a Zoom meeting. So we did not limit our registration, but we ended up with about 588 porches. We do, and the average people that were coming in were with about 5 people. Right away when we saw this, we were very fortunate because we were working with Guinness. We showed them what was going on, and they came up with, hey, we can send them all a rebate if they buy Guinness in the next month. And it will go right to their phone, right to their PayPal accounts. So that was kind of a plus for us because it let us figure out some better content. Art Fest at Home, they really had nothing you could do to, you didn't register for it. You could go on their site and see it. There wasn't a lot of registration. Their event lasted for a month. It lasted from January 25th through February 25th. They also had their art festival in Fort Myers on February 7th and 8th, that weekend. They put out a few Facebook Live posts where they engaged early on, starting in November, talking to people about what was going to be happening during this virtual space. But again, no one was ever asked to register. It was just come if you saw it. They invited you on Facebook. Yumi and High Tea, because they were going to be in a Zoom meeting where you can see all the faces, they wanted to be sure that they could have enough comfort zone with people coming. So they limited it to 50 people at first, knowing that when you're asking people to come to the virtual space and it's free, that you're going to have a dropout rate about 50% to 35%, pretty normal. So they wanted 50, knowing that they would most likely get some dropout people. Their registration, now remember, they had nothing. They had to set up a Facebook page. They had no followers. They pushed through on Eventbrite. They used everything free that they could use. And they had to extend their numbers that they would accept after the first week. They opened up on a Monday, March 8th, and on March 12th, they had 50 people. And they still had 2 weeks of promoting. So they opened it up to 80 and had people on the waiting list. So the max they took was 80, and you'll see what has happened with that. They all had really different ways to engage, how they were going to work. 3 different platforms. Irish Fair was going to stream to Facebook Live, and the engagement was going to be through chatting onto Facebook Live. That was the only way we would know what was happening with our attendees. Art Fest Fort Myers, really the engagement was for them, how many people were going to visit their page and hopefully buy art. And then the other for the Yumi and High Tea, it was going to be in a Zoom platform. So it was going to be conversation, chats on Zoom, and they were also streaming to Facebook because the event sold out, and chats on Facebook. Kind of want to show you what kind of happened during these events. Now, Irish Fair of Minnesota, again, was an hour and a half, 90 minutes. They used the website to update their changes, tell people what was going on. Again, they did a social media campaign, walking every day, telling people what to do, reminding them about the event. Things such like, remember to get your Irish whiskey. Have you started your soda bread? Do you have your favorite tunes? What do you think you're going to listen? What are you going to eat? They had 560 comments. And again, they had 16,000 members, Facebook members already that are following them. They had 2,800 likes and reactions, and their reach was 92,000 plus. The post was shared about 475, and the registered 200, half of them viewed the actual Facebook Live event. They didn't push for donations. They just said, hey, if you want to, go to our website and you can donate through our PayPal. And they got about $2,800, way more than they wanted. Art Fest at Home, again, everything was done on their website, pushed it out to Eventini's site, to the marketplace so they could shop. They only got 164 comments through this time frame regarding Art Fest at Home. People liked it and reacted about 488. But again, they had about 10,000 followers and 10,000 emails that they had connections with. Their reach was about 48,000. They shared their event. The page views where people came through this whole month was 37,000 page views, but that was only 7,000 unique visitors. And they sold about $2,000 worth of art. Now there was 150 artists. That's not a lot to sell. And again, they had no goal for it. They also had their live event going on one of the weekends of the virtual event. That event in normal time would have about 90,000 people. It only had 7,000 for the full 2 days. So they had just as many people in their event that looked at it online and they actually came to it. Yumi and High Tea, they had 76 people watch it on Facebook Live, 40 were on Zoom, and then there were 12 people on that were presenters, so it was 52. They had 250 comments on Facebook and 70 comments on Zoom chat. Their likes and reaction were 1,200, and their reach was about 40,000. The interesting thing with Irish Fair and with Yumi and High Tea was that their reach was beyond local. Irish Fair did get to 43 states and 6 countries. Yumi and High Tea, I think, had 38. No, couldn't have been that many. I think it was 20 states and then the 4 countries that they were working with. So the reach was a lot larger, which I think sometimes in the event world, when I've asked my colleagues, well, where did you promote it to? They're only doing it to their own backyard. And that's fine. But remember, if our lives change and we want to go visit these places, it might be okay to see what's happening. For me in Minnesota to visit events in Seattle or on the East Coast or even in Europe, because who knows, on the day I can travel, will I go back and will this help? When we got done through that, we saw that people were kind of shocked. It was something that was a little unique. There was that 2 of those events had a lot of followers. This one event had no followers and it did well. It had 40,000 people that it reached. And it had, they have 80 followers right now. That Facebook page is shutting down, but they're still getting comments and people are sharing on it, which is kind of the power of social media and the engagement you can get. The nice things about these people on site that are viewing you, you have all their information. You have their emails, you know where they're from. If you've asked the right demographic questions, you have that. And you can still continue to connect with them after the fact. This event for Yumi and High Tea was March 27th. They're still connecting with that Facebook group. They're asking questions. They want to know if they're going to do any more. Who would have thought? I mean, I do Facebook, but I'm not that, I look at it. I'm not that person who goes in and actually asks a lot of questions. But this was kind of an ooh-ah moment, is to see how long lasting it is. In the live events, having produced quite a few and quite large ones, after the event, we get a few like, hey, do you know something about this? But we don't have that constant conversation. And we never really strive to deliver, to decide to create and demonstrate more of keeping it alive. We're like, oh, the event's next year, we'll see you. We'll see you in August of next year when we start pitching about what we're going to do. But with this whole virtual for your business, you have that continuing conversation going. They believe they're friends of yours, and now you can keep them going and inviting them back for other things. When we look at events going forward and asking, when do you think people are going to have return to in-person events? You know, a lot of people think it's going to be second quarter, but as you know, some states are opening up. Our neighbors in Canada are having a hard time, and they're doing some more locking down, but we're not really seeing a big flux of coming back. Looks more like we might have live events in 2021, but more so first quarter of 2022 will come back depending on the vaccine and what's happening. Ideally, why I'm bringing this up is there is probably going to be a virtual experience. And I think as a small business, we tend to think we can't do this. We're too small to do it. That's why I showed you those 3 examples. There was that brand new event. They had nothing. They started from blank and the reach was amazing. And if they were a company, they could continue to draw on those people to increase their business. So it can be done. Is it hard? It's not really hard. It takes a little different thinking about it. I always say, think about you're inviting your friends over, but you're going to have a constant conversation. And these customers that you're working with and you're inviting yourself to go into their space virtually, but you're also asking them to see what you have to offer. And maybe you've never met with them before, or maybe they have come into your place of business, but you don't know anything about them. And this is the way to engage. Just recently, hybrid has been the hot word, and everyone's talking about hybrid, and you're going to offer a digital experience. Again, a lot of the traditional community events think hybrid is, oh, we'll have our event and then we'll just stream it. That's not it. Hybrid, you're going to have that content to keep the people at home that don't want to come to the event engaged, and yet you're going to have a live experience. And it's sort of marrying the two. So it's not as simple as everyone thinks. The Irish Fair of Minnesota event was a hybrid event. We had people watching as we were streaming, and we were engaging with them through Facebook. Art Fest Fort Myers, we were very virtual. We were I always call it, we were a 2D flat event. We were we had pre-recorded content of our performers. We had artist booths, and you could see their works, but it was flat. You could connect with them through Facebook, but you could see their images, and you could purchase from them through the internet. But we didn't really ask for comments coming back. And then the Yumi and High Tea event was a hybrid in terms of we used pre-recorded, we branched it out, but we visited the Caribbean island. We went to St. Vincent and the Grenadines before the volcano. And we got to see what a tea party there looks like and engage with them live while they engaged with our audience that was virtual. Again, when you looked at those results, you saw they had a lot more of personal engagement, which is just something that hybrid can do. You can marry it. You can do live and virtual and bring it back. But sometimes it's just keeping it simple, thinking outside of the box, and moving on that way. When you're doing this, a big takeaway is the role of the event planner will be changing, and it will be constantly changing. And if you are in this industry, you're going to have new skills. I'm self-taught tech. I didn't go to school for tech. I'm just one of those people who will play around with it. I'm kind of the individual who knows a little information. I can be dangerous, but I'm not frightened by it. My 3 interns at Irish Fair and my 2 interns in Fort Myers, they grew up with tech, but they were more uncomfortable with it than I thought. I was like, what's the worst can happen? We'll try it. And if it doesn't work, oh, well, I have that experience on my hand. So you have to have a little bit, but you don't need to have gobs of experience. And you can find people who will help you with it. There are thousands and thousands of people who will help you with it. And you may find out there are some really students that would like to have this behind their belt, for when they are going to get a job. Event planning students from Temple, you can probably contact one of the Dr. Rose or Professor Rosen, and he could help you find maybe some students that are willing to look at some of these projects and help you. Content matters, small bites. As we talked about, you're not going to have 8 hours of content. You're going to do small. Rule of thumb has been 90 minutes is long enough with breaks in between. So you do, maybe you play a song and you come back and you chat. And maybe you go to a cooking demonstration and you come back and you chat. You want to break it up. Remember, people that are watching have so much more going on, their family, maybe the television, maybe their email. They just got a lot going on that you want to keep it moving so they don't get bored and fall asleep. You can keep your audience engaged from the minute they say they're going to come. You can reach out, ask questions. You're also developing a new database of customers. So it's not just keep that, database, CRM, and don't do anything with it. Now play with it, get them to respond, ask them what they're thinking. What kind of stuff would they like after your event? I mean, you could do an event and then the next day do a survey and say, hey, what else would you like to see us do? And you would be amazed at what people come back with and how creative they will be. Really important, and I couldn't stress this more, rehearsals are necessary. So when we were doing Irish Fair, everyone fought us about rehearsals. They fought us about sound checks. They fought us about checking our technology. And then when things go wrong, guess who's throwing the event planner under the bus? The people who didn't want to check and didn't want to come to the rehearsal. So it is really necessary to walk it through. It's also necessary for you as the event planner to get a good sense of what you're doing. In the live event, you always have like, oh, toilets are coming now, and oh, the stage, and then people are going to come in and we're doing this. And you have that timeline. Well, this is no different. The only different thing is you can't change it as easily as you can in the real live experience. The other piece of it is sometimes you're going to have problems, just like every event has problems. I have never produced an event that was perfect. I don't know if I'm amazed when people say, oh yeah, my event was perfect. I've never done one, and I've been in this industry for 30 years. And I believe I'm a decent event producer. Things are going to happen. You're going to have tech problems. You're going to have, if you're inviting some people to come in and they're a speaker, they may have tech problems. Your attendees may have tech problems or can't get in or don't know how to work Zoom or the camera. We were doing one of the events and one of our presenter was not clear. We had gone over it a lot. We practiced, and instantaneously she's up going, am I on? Am I on? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just smile and nod. It's life, and people are here to be entertained. That's not going to cause them to go away, but it's how you handle that type of situation. If you go down, have your backups. You always want to have backups. You want to also look at your risks. One of the risks that was an ooh-ah moment for the Yumi and High Tea group was they were doing virtual. They never thought weather would be a risk. Well, 2 days before they were going on, their Caribbean partners said, hey, just want you to know, we're expecting a volcano. And we're getting shakes now, and the earth is moving. But maybe we should talk about what happens if we can't even get the internet. And that's not so far-fetched. We're coming into the summer season, and how many of you have tornado rainstorms? When I lived in St. Louis for 10 years, I lived in Tornado Alley. We had tornadoes and internet going out more often than not. So you just want to have backup plans. Like if you're the producer who has a co-host on the call, what happens if you can't get on? You get thrown off. And you just want to work it through just like another event that you've been doing, but they can be a lot of fun. They can reach your customer when you're at a place where you can't seem to reach your customer. And the other thing is they can be creative. You don't have to do the same old thing. You can change it. You know, maybe you did an hour seminar, well, maybe you do 15 minutes, a chat with a couple of people, and then come back with a Q&A. It's all available to do whatever you want to do. Does anyone have any questions? I think it's
Yeah, now's the time. Please type any questions you have into the chat box, or you can use the Q&A function in Zoom and we will get those answered for you.
It looked like someone raised their hand. Let me go with Alex.
Yeah, I don't know if we can like unmute people in the webinar format. So maybe we'll just give them a minute to type if they had a question. I am gonna post, oh goodness, where did they go? I have a few resources I'll put in the chat box while people are typing any questions they might have. The first is going to be a survey that we would really love for everyone to take. Just gives us some feedback about today's webinar and some of the future planning that we have for the SBDC. And then I believe Cindy mentioned Ira Rosen, and he leads the Temple's Event Leadership Executive Certification Program. So if you are interested in learning more about the events industry, this is a whole certificate program that Temple offers. And there's a project at the end of it where you could get some like better kind of hands-on type experience. So if anyone's interested, that link will let you take you to some more information there. So a couple questions I'm seeing here. First one, let's see. This is sort of just out of curiosity question we have here, but how or why would a sponsor support an event that doesn't have a goal that they've listed or said?
Because that's an interesting question, and it's really good that you asked it. Most of the sponsors for the Art Fest Fort Myers had been sponsors for their live event, and they were not comfortable going to a live event, and so that's why they sponsored the virtual event. One of the things that you can find out with the virtual events is the data you can get from the Facebook Insights and your Google Insights. And that's the kind of cool part with virtual, is you can show sponsors more of what has actually happened. Guinness sponsored us. Our goal, as you saw, was 10 porches. Once they saw what we were going to do and they saw that first hit, they were like, what else do you need from us? What do you want? Because they were not able to be at events. Right now, still in the event arena, many sponsors for brand activation are not willing to go to live events. They're not willing to send their staff to live events. They're not willing to be present there. And so they're saying, we'll support your virtual piece. And hopefully you'll be able to prove the goals that we think. When you're working with your sponsors, you really know what's important to them. So if with Guinness, I knew it was selling Guinness product. So when we showed them what was going on, and then they offered the rebate, then we could go back to them and say, here's how many people took the offer up. You have that data. These are only the ones that we've gotten. And here's how many saw your content, and we can track to where they came from and what they were doing. We can show a map of where the people were from, where the reach was a lot more. So that part is, but that's why they would probably sponsor something with no goal, is it was an overall event that they knew a lot about when it was live.
Great. We do have another question. Let's see, if you are starting out with a virtual event, Are there any particular platforms that you would suggest for those who maybe aren't quite so tech savvy?
Depending on what your content is and what you want to do. If you want to engage with your customers, I think the easiest one is Zoom. It's sharing your slides. It's pretty easy and there's a lot of great tutorials. But what I liked with Zoom, and I know why the group from the master students used it, is they wanted to have an engagement. If you just want to stream, you can do Facebook Live and not engage, or you could do a StreamYard. That isn't that hard to do. But if you want to engage and keep your customers moving and have that, I would say Zoom is good, and it's also affordable. I'm a big person. I work with a lot of nonprofits who do not have money to spend, $5,000 on a platform, and they can take their first step with Zoom. I think a year member of the Pro Zoom is $150 a year. So that's where I would start. You can also, look around and search. There's some people who will help you. But again, I'm self-taught. I did not think I wanted to be doing virtual events at all. And I was thrown into it. And it became at first, as I said, with Irish Fair, we were just going to do all pre-recorded and push it out. And then it became that everyone wanted to engage. Our performers from Ireland said, hey, we'll do a pre-recorded, and then we'll push it out on our Facebook page, and we'll send it to our customers, which was way more than we wanted to. And we didn't have to pay them, which was kind of, it's uncomfortable because they're musicians and they were hurting just like everybody else. But they said, no, we just want our music to get out there. Does anyone else have any questions?
Did your performers do the full Zoom rehearsal as well?
They sent us pre-recorded. The ones that did the pre-recorded is we looked at it and made sure it met our needs. We asked them all to do an intro of, hi, we're in Dublin and we're just so excited to be playing for you for the Irish Fair, and that piece. So they didn't have to be on the program. For the master student, they had performers from Canada, the Caribbean. They sent pre-recorded contents with that intro. But the funny thing is, all of them were on the Zoom call and logged in and commented and shared and engaged with people on the call. We did a breakout room in the Yumi and high tea they did, and they just had people talk about what kind of foods they would serve at a high tea. And it was interesting to see how lively some of those got. So it was pretty simple. But yeah, we did make them practice if they were going to be on. And they, like the dancers were angry. I'm like, well, you got to practice. And because you don't know, it's you can't just start over. We're live. It was kind of interesting.
Any other questions we have? I will say again, though, everyone is welcome to join the office hours. Those are from 3:30 to 5:30. It's a little bit more of a sort of intimate setting. It is the Zoom meeting format. So we let about 3 to 4 people in at a time, and you are welcome to unmute yourself, and you can turn your camera on if you'd like, and you can ask Cindy live and in person any questions that you have. I'll post the link to that to register for those again, if you'd like. And like I said, we'll be there from 3:30 to 5:30, so you can join at any time. But if anyone still here in the meantime needs to type in any additional questions, Cindy and I are going to stick around for a few more minutes. But if not, we hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. And thank you so much for joining us today. We've appreciated it.